So mini grids have been a thing for a while, and they're fantastic solutions for rural electrification. But when we evaluated the landscape, we wanted to prove to financial institutions that energy access is a financially viable venture. Okay. The feedback we got from most financiers was that without subsidy, then the mini grids are not viable, right? And it is almost impossible to scale a business on subsidies. I mean, you can't rely on subsidies to scale a business. Back to the drawing board, and we scanned the industry, we scanned all the technology options that's available globally, and we asked ourselves a question: what technology can take us to financial viability in the shortest period of time? Okay, and we realized the sub-segment of the rural communities that's one, it's very unprofitable for mini grids, very unprofitable for mini grids, and which means there are many of these communities, many, and nobody wants to touch them. And why don't they want to touch them is because the cost per connection is so high. And the reason is because a majority of that cost per connection goes into transmission and distribution expenses. Because if you look at the rural landscape, particularly in the northern part of Nigeria, you may have a house here, and the next house would be 500 meters away or 200 meters away. These houses are very, very sparsely distributed. But if you run a mini grid, it's a centralized solution. And you have to take power from that centralized solution and run that power to so many of these sparsely populated houses. And imagine there is like one house at the extreme end of the community that is basically 2 kilometers away from the next house. You're going to run a 2 kilometer cable just to supply a house that consumes maybe 200 watts hour per day. Makes no sense. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's far. But it's either you exclude that consumer completely, or you run a 2 kilometer cable to that house and they consume 200 watt hour per day because they are guys a light bulb and a fan and phone charger. So, and I said, well, there must be a better way. Can we do something that does not constrain us to basically taking cables from points to points, right? And we looked at and we found this Australian OEM, very new at that time, because they're also quite a new company called Okra Solar, right? And they were looking to deploy their innovative technology called mesh grids. And what is the mesh grid? A mesh grid is basically a decentralized solution where you have solar panels on the roof of the houses, no powerhouse anywhere. So the roof of the houses serve as your location for installation of your solar panels. And then from that house, you connect the houses very close by the main house. So the main house is called a hub. And the houses very close by, when I say very close by, I mean less than 50 meters. And that's surrounding house called a spoke. And then you can use the hub to power the spoke. Thereby, you're sending power less than 50 meters to a location and not 2 kilometers. And if there's another house located maybe more than 500 meters away, we don't need to connect those two houses together. You start a new cluster. So we have these clusters of hubs and spokes all around the community. And that's what the mesh grid is about. That's the kind of architecture of the mesh grid. So you have hubs and spokes all separated within the community, and you're not bound by interconnecting everybody together, right? Everybody can still have power. At the same time, your cost per connection is much lower because you're saving at least 90% on transmission and distribution cost. And most importantly, you can still do productive use, because people say, well, why don't you just deploy a solar home system, right? The reason why you can't just deploy solar home systems is because solar home systems are quite small in power. They probably like 200 watts, 300 watts, 500 watts. But then we wanted something that could contribute to drive economic development in these communities, and something that can power like fridge, freezers, grinding machines. And then with the Okra solution, it goes up to 3.6 kilowatts, right? And that can provide enough power for productive use. So yes, you can get this, you still get the benefit of productive use, but you get the flexibility of deploying on house per house basis, and without the disadvantage of a significantly high transmission and distribution cost. So that's the reason why we decided to go for the mesh grids. And that's how our energy as a services works.